On the subject of terminal ballistics, that is, rifle pistol bullets, projectiles, and what they do in tissue, foot-pounds of energy is not a wounding mechanism. What I mean by that is in the world of medically researched and valid, objective, demonstrable evidence or demonstrable results in tissue, foot-pounds of energy is this, I won't say it's meaningless, but it's a useless number. So the issue is foot-pounds of energy doesn't tell you anything about the wound channel, right? People will say, oh, well, it tells you, the potential energy. Neat. Well, I have potential to be better than Michael Jordan or LeBron James or whoever. That doesn't mean that's real. So foot-pounds of energy is just bullet weight and muzzle velocity or impact velocity. That doesn't tell me anything about the bullet. To know what a bullet does in tissue, you have to shoot it in tissue or properly calibrated tissue simulant, aka FBI spec, ordnance grade, organic 10% ballistics gelatin that is calibrated with a BB at the right thickness or whatever, density. And then you measure the wound. You shoot it into it, and you measure the wound. You do that over and over and over again. You do that through barriers, and you do that through at different impact velocities. That's the only way to know what a bullet will do in tissue. You can, two bullets, 180 grain, 30 cal, at 3,000 feet per second impact. Okay. Both bullets have the exact same energy at impact. One bullet penetrates 5 inches and creates a 15 inch wide wound. The other bullet penetrates 3.5 feet and creates a wound about the size of a number 2 pencil. Sweet. Well, they have the same energy, so they're the same thing. No. The reason the one bullet only penetrated 5, 6, 7 inches but created such a wide wound is it was a sintered frangible bullet, as in like compressed powder. It completely fragmented and came apart within 6, 7 inches. The reason the other bullet penetrated 3.5 feet and created a pencil-sized wound is because it was a relatively flat-nosed tungsten solid or tungsten cord solid. Nothing deformed in that bullet. So the energy didn't tell us anything. And that the potential is there doesn't really matter. And it's such a functionally useless metric that even among bullets of similar type, it doesn't tell you anything about the wound channel. So a Hornady SST and a Nosler ballistic tip, functionally the similar type, different impact velocities between them, it doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell you anything of what that bullet's going to do. Or correction, different foot-pounds of impact energy doesn't tell you anything about what that bullet will do. Impact velocity does, which is why all of the bullet manufacturers use impact velocity. So if we use I'm trying to think, so we'll use like a tipped cup and core, plastic tipped cup and core bullet, okay? So we have a 22 cal 77 grain, and we have a 130 grain 6.5 millimeter, and we have a 195 grain 30 cal. They all upset at the same impact velocity, 1,800 feet per second, give or take. They all reliably upset, that is, expand, fragment, etc. But the impact energy at that 1,800 feet per second with each one of those is wildly different. So it might be you need 1,400 feet per second or 1,400 foot-pounds of energy for that 30 cal 195 grain bullet to upset, and you might only need 450 foot-pounds for the 22 cal 77 grain bullet to upset. Their impact velocities are identical, but the energy required is all over the map. In other words, that's not a consistent metric that even means anything. It doesn't tell you how deep the bullet will penetrate, doesn't tell you how wide the wound will be or the overall shape of the wound, nor is it useful in a bullet line. Every manufacturer uses impact velocity as the metric for expansion or upset. Now, that doesn't mean that when they say a bullet will expand at X impact, that their version of expansion or upset would be okay or acceptable to you. It just means that they're using impact velocity to do so. So foot-pounds of energy has no bearing, has no functional bearing or no functional use in telling you anything about a bullet. It doesn't do anything. A 77 grain, a Sierra tipped Match King 77 grain, .224 out of a 223 at like 380 foot-pounds of energy penetrates 16, 17 inches and creates Coke can size wounds. Well, that's, a fifth of what the common wisdom is to kill an elk. That doesn't matter. The wound created is what matters. So foot-pounds of energy is all over the board. It has no functional relevancy or use whatsoever. Impact velocity, when coupled with measuring what that bullet does in tissue at that impact velocity, does tell you something useful.